Want to expand your speaking and storytelling skills and grow your influence business? This is Speakipedia Media brought to you by Speakipedia.com. I'm your host, Dave Bricker, bringing you straight talk, smart strategies, and amazing stories from visionary speakers and thought leaders. My guest is a profit attracting expert. She's the founder of Profit GPS, a social selling done for you marketing and training firm specializing in rock star personal branding and direct messaging targeted lead generation. She marries her marketing skills with her soul's purpose to empower business professionals to live richly fulfilling lives. She helps countless small and medium sized businesses identify their strengths, recognize their weaknesses, develop opportunities, and banish stumbling blocks. Her Go for the Gold Sales Genius Mindset program guides her audiences on how to break through price objections. Please welcome professional speaker and LinkedIn marketing expert, Marilyn August.
Thank you so much. It's so much fun to be here.
So, Marilyn, let's jump right into this topic of LinkedIn
Sure.
because this platform has so much potential, and yet it seems hardly anyone knows how to use it well. And that's going to tie into other aspects of today's conversation. But let's start with the basics. Why should people focus on LinkedIn?
Because they have no choice. 850 million users, particularly if they're B2B businesses. Where else are you going to go? Seriously. It isn't a choice anymore these days, just like it's not a choice to have a website. Would you be in the marketplace without a website? I mean, that's an interesting question because there are still people who say, oh, I don't know anything about it. I never use it. Sure, if you want to be invisible, but if you want to book speaking engagements, let's face it, you're being checked out.
Yeah, it is one of the places that people look. And what would you say? Because somebody may not really know the difference, and somebody's saying, well, I'm on Facebook, it's got more people than that. I'm on Instagram, it's got more people than that. And this is a very different platform, isn't it?
Yes, Dave, I'm so glad you brought that up because LinkedIn, this is going to be a radical statement. LinkedIn is not social media. Digital marketers tend to group it with social media, but it's not social media, it's social selling. The big difference, most important difference, is that it's personal. So I like to tell my clients, likes never go to the bank. So don't tell me how many followers you have. Don't tell me how many likes you have. All that is very fancy and very nice. But what are the results that you take to the bank? Is one-to-one connections, one-to-one marketing. So I call LinkedIn social selling because it's virtual to real relationships. And it's the number one mistake that most people make because they've been taught that they're all the same. And they're not all the same.
And it's interesting. I completely agree with you. I always say followers are not dollarers.
That's even better. That's
It
even
doesn't,
better. I just say likes don't go to the bank.
right, which is actually maybe not quite as clever, but easier to understand and pronounce. So keep that one. But yes, everybody's they get that little dopamine hit when they get a like.
Mhm.
Oh, somebody liked my post. So what? Did somebody engage with you? Did somebody uh, join your
Exactly.
program? Go to your website? Did somebody take some action other than saying I like this? Which basically just trains the algorithm to send you more of the same kind of junk.
Yeah, and there are actually bots that like posts. So a like is pretty worthless. I hate to break the bubble, but it's pretty worthless. And as is the illusion that because somebody saw your post, they're going to hire you. I've been writing posts for longer than some people, too long. And the truth of the matter is, I've never been hired because somebody saw him post and liked me. So you're right on track. It's all something that unfortunately people have been sold without a lot of thought through it, by it, or with it.
Again, right in sync with you. And with your sales and marketing background, you're well qualified to address many of the mistakes. Some of these mistakes have to do with not knowing the full capabilities of the platform, and others, I think a lot of them have to do with people not knowing how to sell, regardless of what platform they're on. So let's cover the LinkedIn side of this first and start at the beginning. And I'm sure we could spend the whole session on this, but what goes into a good LinkedIn profile?
Well, I'm glad you started with the profile, Dave, because the number one mistake people make, and I've kept saying the number one mistake they have, I actually have a whole rubric, and you can check my post that says stop stupid stuff because there's so much stupidity. I mean, I used to have a file of would you believe this, but now I call it stop stupid stuff. The entire system revolves around your profile, which is what fascinates me and frustrates me that even today I see profiles written in the third person as if they're resumes. So there's two biggies. One is I see resume style profiles telling me how great you are and what you've done in the past. And I have really bad news. Nobody cares what you've done in the past. And the other style I see is the profiles written as an advertisement. This is me. This is what I can do for you. I'm so great. And if I see the words love or I'm passionate about or I care about, those words send me into outer space. It's like a so what? I don't care what you love. I care if you can solve my problem, my business problem. So there's so many things that are critical about the profile. That's why I call it your personal brand. A profile should operate like a 24/7 sales machine, highlighting you and your value proposition. And I go even deeper than that, putting the intangible into tangible words. One of the questions I was just talking to somebody this morning, and one of the questions I asked is of all the things that you could do in the entire world, why are you doing this? So it goes pretty deep into starting with the why, which is a very famous book. But a profile is a values clarification, a personal brand. And you can start above the fold with the image. Oh, Dave, you can't believe what I see in those photos. The basics. I mean, for goodness sake, people, your photos there all the time. So I had one man, and I keep telling stories because you're a storyteller. One man who had a family picture. That's a very little tiny space in that circle there on your profile. And he has a photo of him and his daughter. Very appropriate on Facebook. And when I said something to him, people get very put out by what they think they should do. And I said, well, that's not a professional photo on LinkedIn. And he said to me, yeah, but I like it. Well, how does that, you and your daughter, position yourself as a professional?
Right? If your
So,
daughter's not your business partner, what is she doing there?
but he liked it. So, what he liked was more important than what a prospect might see. In my trainings, I show a photo array, flashing photos on the screen, photo images, headshots. And the purpose of it is to let people know they make an instant decision about whether or not they want to pursue, to get to know this person, to even shake hands with them virtually. And inevitably ask the question, which is the one person you would never do business with? And I put a ringer in there. I thought I was really being smart, so sharp. I know which one the group's going to change. And I've done this training. Well, you don't know, I don't know how many times I've done it. I've done a lot. And they always pick the one with the fancy background. They want a clean, simple, professional headshot. And it always surprises me because the guy's wearing a suit, everything else is fine, but he has a curtains behind him and they don't like that. They won't do business with him just based on the photo. So get a professional headshot. And I know
That's
that's a long story, but
that's all right, but they're swiping right on that photo, and I think it works in a lot of different. different venues, different areas.
Yes. So the photos, above the fold, think of it as a newspaper. And we're a very visual society now. And can I say just one other thing about that free real
Go
estate at the top?
go ahead.
Okay. I still see the LinkedIn default blank banner. And then I also see, well, I also have an array of those inconsistent branding. I see that is on your website isn't on your LinkedIn. So it's a whole different look. So there was digital marketer, I think was my favorite. He was selling digital marketing and he had a default background. So inconsistencies, incongruent. I mean, that banner is free space. Use it well. If you're a speaker, which I imagine a lot of people listening to this, the best thing you can do is have an image of you speaking other than talking about you speaking. If you're a speaker, I had one of the people that I worked with, we took an array of his photos and blended them in from his speaking. So it showed what he did rather than talking about what he did. And show, don't tell. And if that isn't I've got lousy photos. If you don't have a good photo, get a good photo or use what's on your website. I often grab an image and enhance it from the website because I do the graphic backgrounds.
Now you've brought up a couple of good points. One is this idea that you want to answer this question, why you? Why are you the person they want to hire?
Yeah.
And there's crossover here because if you're speaking to a group of people you've never spoken to before, you have to answer that same question in the stories you tell. Because being a subject matter expert is cost of entry. Well, of course, you know about AI or DEI or whatever cluster of letters you happen to be talking about that day. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. But what is your unique perspective that we can't get from anybody else? Because otherwise, we're going to find somebody on the same topic who's cheaper and tick that OSHA box. Right? So that's a very important question to answer, no matter what it is that we are doing.
It's so fascinating that you would say that because that there's crossover because when I asked on one of my speaker groups, what's your main way of getting business? How do you get your next gig? I'd say a good percentage of speakers said referrals. Okay, so picture this scenario, another story. You're speaking, you are brilliant.
Well,
You
of
deliver
course.
a great speech. Of course you are. We knew that. We knew that going in there. And somebody in the audience says, I know a group that you need to talk to. I'm going to make a referral. And if you're smart, you have a way to follow up with that person. And that person's reputation is on stake when they make a referral. We think people just hand out our names, they just don't. So Sally tells George about you, and George is the head of a big company that can hire you. What's George going to do? He's not going to call you up and say, hey, I want you to speak at our major convention, and we're going to pay you $15,000. George is going to check you out just because Sally told him to. And where's he going to check out? He's going to go to your website. Are you real? Is this person worth talking to? And he's going to go to your LinkedIn profile. As I say, a skinny profile equals skinny results. I actually had this happen to me. Unfortunately, I made the referral before I looked at the guy's profile. Once I looked at his profile, I couldn't refer him. I mean, how can somebody who writes profiles refer somebody that has a lousy profile? Well, it wasn't for profile writing. It was to do something from one of my clients. I'm going to trust my client to somebody who, I almost said jerk, to somebody who doesn't present themselves well. Now, just imagine you're a speaker, a $20,000 a gig speaker, or even a $10,000 a gig speaker, and you've got nothing on your profile. or your profile reads like a resume. Come on, get real.
Yeah, you bring up another important point, and that is so many people I see people get scammed. Like, well, how many gigs have you gotten from your website? Really? None? Well, you need a new website. Well, you're not going to get a gig from your
No,
website. You're not going to get a gig from your LinkedIn profile.
no,
I mean, I actually have, but that's a freakish thing to have happen. And I mean, okay, somebody, long story, but once in a while, but don't count on that happening. And you're not going to get hired because of your social media. But when that referral happens, all of those channels are evidence that you are what you say you are, that you can deliver the transformation you claim to be able to deliver. And it's really important to have that there. And at the same time, not expect that, okay, I've got a great profile. I'm going to sit back and watch the inquiries roll in. It just doesn't work that way.
no. It's I call it a giant jigsaw puzzle. But think of your own buying habits, and then I want to tell you another story. We probably could trade stories all day, but um, think of your buying habits. I mean, I'll tell a story on myself. In the olden days, and I can remember the olden days, if I wanted to try a new restaurant, I simply went in, tried it out, and if I liked it, I might tell 10 people. If I hated it, I'd tell 15, but I wouldn't go back. Well, not too long ago, I found myself in the parking lot of a strip mall, and I was looking at a new sushi restaurant, sushi, raw fish. So I think, gee, I'd like some sushi, but I wonder what this place is like. What did I do? I did what you do. I got my Google machine out and checked them out, read the reviews, got a lot of information about them, found out they had a very pleasant staff, the food looked good, the reviews were good. I opened the door. Now think of yourself as selling intellectual property, which all of us are selling. I mean, I could see the photos of the sushi. That's a product. You're selling a service, no matter how you've productized them. So you're going to get checked out a heck of a lot more than you used to get checked out before anybody will open the door. So if you want engagement, if you want the door open, or as I say, from virtual to real, you better have all those pieces of the puzzle in place, and they revolve around your LinkedIn profile, no matter what other social media you have. If the profile's lousy or all about you and how great you are, you're not going to get the gig. And I just have to tell you one other quick story because this illustrates what you said. I had a client, and I'm laughing about it now. It wasn't funny at the time. I did his profile. And of course, I always ask about content because content, again, credibility, all the pieces, the jigsaw puzzle. And so he says, "Well, I have videos. I do videos. I do weekly videos. And you particularly, because you're such a professional, Dave, you can understand this. Now, no disparaging Italians, but some Italians tend to talk with their hands." So I looked at this guy's videos, and it was his face in the camera like this, and it was all hands. Well, I made the mistake of suggesting to his ego that maybe he wasn't getting gigs because his videos were lousy. They were, obviously phone videos, and they were him leaning into the camera, lecturing with his hands. And what did he do? He blamed LinkedIn. He wasn't getting hired because it was all LinkedIn's fault, not that he had lousy videos. So, what you say about all the pieces of the puzzle, everything has to be of professional quality. And that's one of my many, many stop stupid stuff stories. I have too
And
many of them.
and I love that though. That I like the stories, but I also love the values. Yes, mediocrity is not going to attract anything but mediocrity and stuff that aspires to mediocrity, and you know where it has to be there. So let's let's talk about another thing. There's the free LinkedIn account, and there is the quote unquote professional account. Which one do we want and why? Or when?
Well, LinkedIn, since Microsoft bought LinkedIn, it's gone like all the other free SaaS out there. You want free if you're just going to post a profile and not use LinkedIn to do lead gen. If you're going to use LinkedIn to do lead gen, the way I recommend. So this is so hard because the premium that LinkedIn offers, that premium subscription, in my opinion, is worthless. It gives you very little for the value. And the sales navigator that LinkedIn offers is a little bit pricey. And if you're not going to use LinkedIn to lead generation, in my opinion, it's not worth it. Now, having said that, Sales Navigator does two things very, very well. It's really set up for enterprise businesses. LinkedIn is, from both its advertising and everything else, has really gone the way of wanting enterprise large companies. In fact, it's integrated with Salesforce. And so that tells you what you need to know about the direction of who they want their customer to be, who they want their client to be. But having said that, Sales Navigator does two things very well. It does sales intelligence, meaning that if you're selling your services or marking, let's say you got that referral from George. Well, George isn't the only decision maker. He may be more than one decision maker. What Sales Navigator does very well is it allows you to do what we used to call sales intelligence. It allows you to track the other decision makers in the company. So I say there's no gatekeepers on LinkedIn. So let's say there's 5 key players that are going to hire you for their conference, are going to be involved in the decision. You can save every one of those decision makers as a lead and track them and start communication with them. The money in LinkedIn, the money is in the mailbox. It's not in the posting. That's another myth that I debunk. It's direct messaging, and those are the kind of campaigns I run, are direct messaging campaigns. The second thing that Sales Navigator does better than anybody else is it has 10 filters. So, for example, I'm doing a campaign right now for sales managers, sales executives, and a certain size company in a certain region because I keep my searches to a reasonable number. I often ask clients if there's not 5,000 prospects on LinkedIn, don't bother with Sales Navigator. If you can't go all over the country or internationally, I've actually working with a speaker who wants to speak internationally. And so we can target, those 10 filters are gold as far as I'm concerned. It's worth every penny of the fee that you pay because it's so targeted. You can target by how long they've worked at the company, by job title, by region. And so I can also, because I run the campaign, can also craft the messaging. That's the other key to this. I know you're going to ask me about that, so I'll wait till you ask. But the key,
And we'll get
this,
there.
yeah, the sales navigator part, really, if you're not going to do a targeted campaign, it's not worth it. But if you are going to do a targeted campaign, and I maintain that you can't do these manually. Now remember, LinkedIn has a 400 invites a month limit. So I say that, Dave, because this is one of my hot buttons. Those advertisements you see that people are promising you 300 to 500 leads a month or 200 to 300 leads a month, they're scams. The only way they can do that is to spam mail boxes. And do people hate that, Dave?
Oh yeah, and I think that's the new big business is coaching coaches on how to coach coaches and finding leads for those people, right?
People have always sold to coaches, but this is out of control. Yeah, I see those ads. It always cracks me up when I see a LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn expert ad on Facebook. It's because Facebook's cheaper than LinkedIn. And then I go check out their profile. Don't even get me started. But no, really, if somebody's promising you that many leads, first of all, as a speaker, if you need that many leads, there's something. And secondly, they can't do it. LinkedIn doesn't do what Facebook does. LinkedIn will shut you down and you don't get a second chance. So be careful out there. I needed to say that. It's my warning.
Yeah.
Be careful
No,
out
good for you. Call out the scammers and
Yeah.
spammers. I'm all for that. I think what those people do is they get an Apollo.io account or someplace where they can just download email lists, and then they start selling leads and trying to turn that monthly subscription into a profit, whatever it is. And it turns out to be a racket. Everybody's got the same leads. About 30% of those leads are going to bounce anyway, but that's a whole other topic. But
Yeah,
yeah, that
it's another hot button.
yeah, don't buy leads. We have to generate leads,
That's
which
right.
comes back to what you're buying a couple of questions, because you've already said that you're really focused on the lead generation rather than the content posting side of things.
Mhm.
But quickly, there's LinkedIn newsletters and articles, so there's this idea, how important is long form content, and then there's organic content, paid content, ads. How can we best share our messages on LinkedIn, or should we bother?
As far as the newsletter, the long form newsletter is something new to LinkedIn. And like Microsoft, they'll does, when Microsoft always updates you, LinkedIn changes stuff without doing user forums. I don't see it as any different than gathering likes. So subscribers are nice. I do one every other week. Why not? You might as well do it. It's right there. But I don't see any real, no one's reading my newsletter and saying, I got to hire Marilyn. But I also do email. So once you develop content, use it. So I don't think there's anything wrong with a long form. But here's the thing, people don't have attention spans these days. I used to write blogs. When I first started writing blogs, they were 1,500 words. Today, I write a post. If it's 500 words, it's too long. So catching attention in this noisy time, I'd say the shorter and to the point. There's a guy that I'm following that writes very succinct 2-3 line tips that really, drill down on one point of what he teaches. I use Canva very well to do interesting posts. So posts are different. It isn't that you don't do content, it's just that you don't have to do them 5 days a week. Or as I always tell clients, if you got nothing to say nothing, because people are being able to spot AI. It's not that I don't use AI. I may use AI as an editor, but if you're writing AI content or you're buying the stuff that says we'll do 45 posts for you in 60 minutes and you got no substance or nothing to say, people are beginning to see through that. They're not stopping the scroll. So content's important. Substance is more important. Quality over quantity is what I say. And again, it's part of the puzzle, but I don't think it's the whole story. And as far as paid advertising, LinkedIn's not cheap. As I said, they're going the enterprise business model. To me, advertising is your least effective way of generating clients, whether it's on Facebook or on LinkedIn. And why bother? I mean, why not post instead? But, and there's a caveat, I'm going to have to be real careful here. LinkedIn, in its wisdom, and that was said sarcastically, created this crazy algorithm that changes without notice. And one of their theories is the more people that see your posts, the more they'll show it to you, to show to more people. So I'm exploring some ways to get around the algorithm right now. But they also be careful out there. If they think that you're deliberately trying to get around the algorithm, their little gremlins will find you. Just be careful out there. I won't recommend anything until I check it out completely. But that's why posting is effective and isn't effective, and tagging 100 people to look at your post, now that gets old real quick. So it's partly, is it worth it? It's necessary, but again, when Microsoft messes with things, they don't go and do a user forum and say, "Do you think we ought to do this?" They just do it. I still maintain that Microsoft hasn't found its identity yet. Part of it thinks it's still a job board,
Love
so
that.
it's kind of a dicey question because of the algorithm.
If you're just joining us, you're tuned into Speakipedia Media for aspiring and professional speakers and thought leaders who want to make more money by changing hearts, minds, and fortunes. My guest is speaker marketing strategist and LinkedIn expert Marilyn August. So let's talk a bit about LinkedIn events, because Facebook has events, LinkedIn has events, but something that I discovered recently is if you create an article, if you write long form content, LinkedIn will email that content. I created an article about that content, including the registration link, and LinkedIn emailed that to 4,000 of my followers. That's a pretty neat feature. The people who follow me on LinkedIn all got the email.
Right.
And I didn't realize I had 4,000 followers, but all of a sudden, because of that feature, that turns that into a mailing list.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we spoke earlier about people who don't know how to sell. This is not a LinkedIn problem. This is just one of the places where it shows up. And I think we all get so many connection requests that sounds like, you have a great profile. I'd love to connect. And of course, if you do, you get an immediate pitch. So, where are people going wrong with marketing and selling in general?
In general, if you use the word selling or you try to sell on LinkedIn, psychologically, you're ruining your brand. Let's get the distinction between marketing and sales. LinkedIn is marketing. It's virtual marketing. And for me, one-to-one meeting is always the goal for me with my clients. My job is to get them a scheduled meeting. Once they get the meeting, it's sales. Sales is transactional. It's it's very different than marketing. Marketing is an invitation. So on LinkedIn, you're offering an invitation to get to know and like you. Sales, you're getting the trust. You're trusting, building trust so that you can close the deal. So that's why I say that LinkedIn, I build pipelines and I do lead gen. I don't close deals for people because that's sales. So let's get very clear. So the people that are spamming you and pitching you, you're not going to do business with them. Don't do it. You ruin your brand. That's a no. This is mother speaking. Don't do it. Don't sell on LinkedIn.
No, but they're all cluttering up my feed and my
Mhm.
inbox and they're ruining the platform. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that folks like you are out there teaching people uh, how to change that conversation from price to value. All of this, hi, buy, this kind of stuff just doesn't work. So let's say that there's someone you do want to connect with on LinkedIn. What are a few do's and don'ts for that first contact message?
Well, the first contact message is critical. And if you're doing this manually, the best thing to do is take a moment and look at their profile and find some reason or something they do that you like. So if you're targeting a particular person, that let's say you heard about, I'm going to use George again, you heard about George and you got his name, but the person who said they'd make a referral hasn't contacted George for you. So very wisely, you're going to contact George yourself. Take a look at their profile, take 2 minutes, find out a little something about George or quote something from his profile, but find something nice to say about George. Um, in my LinkedIn tips and scripts, okay, this is a commercial. I have a free ebook, and one of the messages that I screenshot in there was a person asking to connect because they had read the other person's newsletter and they found something they liked. I read in your newsletter that. So make it personal, real, and authentic. There's no new news here. And stroke the person a bit because that way you'll get a better reply because now Microsoft again made the place where you accept connection requests a separate window. So the person has to go in there and actually accept your request. So messaging is it's critical and I've started using humor in my message, just a touch of humor. You can put a story, and I've started doing this in my profiles when I write profiles, into 2 or 3 sentences because you only have 300 words. So you don't really want to use 300 words. But crafting the message, this is why I'm a done for you. It's probably the most important part. I keep saying the most important part to everything, but crafting the message is what will get you a yes on the connection. And I'm finding that people really appreciate authentic marketing. And I know it's a rubric, it's a word that's used, but I'll give you an example. I get a spreadsheet, I get a list of my connections, my new connections from the campaign I run. So let's say I've connected over the month with 30 people and they haven't interacted with me, they haven't engaged, they've just accepted the connection request. The next step in my system is nurturing, which means they go into an email list. The very first email to those people are telling them how I met them and telling them to delete me if they don't want to be bothered, and promising them, which is true, that I don't nag them and they won't get an email from me every other day. I cannot tell you how many replies I get of how appreciative they are that they were told how they got on my list, and opt out is welcome. And I use funny words like if you hate being here or you don't want to be bothered or your mailbox. So I say what's going on in the marketplace. In the sales training that I now am a trainer, there's a word for that. That's like called the takeaway. And I take it away. I get great response. People stay. They write me a note and say, thank you so much. Because there's so much garbage out there right now.
Well, one of the points that you bring up that's really worth reinforcing is this idea of actually doing some research on a prospect instead of scraping them off a list. So, an example is I'll get a connection request. Hey, Dave, have you ever thought about publishing a book? And I write them back like, I've published 14 books. You are not doing your homework on your prospects. Please take me off your list. Now, maybe they don't care because to them it's a numbers game.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just a terrible way to treat people. It's kind of insulting. And if somebody were to reach out to me and say, hey, Dave, I see you're really into sailing and this is something we have in common. Or, hey, Dave, I know I love jazz guitar the way you do. Or even on a personal note, all of a sudden we have a personal connection. And that comes from looking not just at their LinkedIn profile, but hey, I want this person to hire me and to pay me 5 figures for a speaking gig. Is it worth it for me to take my time and look at their Facebook profile, look at their Instagram? What's going on? Because if I can find that point of connection, they are going to say, okay, Dave wants to sell me something, which is fine. We're all selling something. That's all right. But he's willing to make a little investment in the relationship, and they're going to feel much more willing to do that in return.
You know, that's so true. One of my associates, man I worked with for a while, he's an alumni of his local, he's connecting only with the people in his alumni association. So they have the commonality of the team that they both support and the school experience. So finding something in common, it's great if you want to take the time to do the research. Because as speakers, I will ask, how many gigs do you need a year? How many do you want a year? And if it's an unreasonable, I had one newbie tell me she wanted 40, and I said, okay, bye, because I knew she didn't know what she was doing. But as a speaker, if you have a reasonable number of gigs, the research isn't that hard. We got the Google machine. And also, I have to say that when I'm running a campaign, it's a little more generic than that, but the second or third message is very personal.
So, Marilyn, there are so many topics we could dive into, and I suspect at some point we will. But you offer a number of workshops on LinkedIn, on selling. Talk a little bit about the programs and the services that you offer, who they're for, and the value your audiences receive. And include in that, while I'm asking all of these compound questions, what is Profit GPS all about?
Profit GPS is, let's start at the end. Profit GPS is exactly what it says. It's your GPS to avoid the detours on the road to being more profitable. My goal in life is that you close more deals and you make more money. And so Profit GPS is a training, consulting, done for you, one-step shop that you can laser through the noise out there and get the answers you need and the guidance you need in the form of a leading with LinkedIn. So I work 100% with B2B professionals, service professionals. And I particularly like to work with people and companies that are selling their own intellectual property. In other words, not an insurance salesman or a mortgage broker. And my workshop is Lead with LinkedIn, which I do for small businesses, for small sales organizations, associations. I speak on leading with LinkedIn and on personal branding. My signature talk, Go for the Gold, is on overcoming price objections, because once you get the person on a meeting, you got to be able to sell them. And so it segues right into sales training and overcoming money objections. I work one-on-one with people. I'm very embedded in your business. I will not send you to a course you have to take to find out, 20 hours of coursework to find out one answer to one question. It's very personal. I'm very fussy about who I work with, because it's very involved what I do. And so I am a done for you. I'm basically, you hand off your getting the gig so that you can spend more time on stage. And that's my goal, is to be your back office and support you so that you're spending more time on stage. And also I'm getting on stage. So I love speaking. I love talking. You can see that. And helping people live a richly fulfilled life. That is ultimately what I'm looking for. And it takes money to do that. And I'd rather work with people who are making a difference in the world.
And I believe you accomplish all of those goals. Where can our listeners discover more about you?
Well, obvious place is my LinkedIn profile, Marilyn August, and profitgps.com. My email is Marilyn at profitgps.com. Everything is under one umbrella. So the best place to get me is on LinkedIn. I'd love to have you reach out and tell me if I did a good job today or not. And also, I have the complimentary ebook, LinkedIn Tips and Scripts. It's short, it's to the point. And if you want that, all you have to do is ask. No strings attached.
Marilyn, I think that's fantastic. I really appreciate you being my guest today.
Thank you.
I'm Dave Bricker, inviting you to explore the world's most comprehensive resource for speakers and storytellers at www.speakipedia.com. If you're watching this on social media video, please love, subscribe, and share your comments. And if you're listening to the podcast, keep your hands on the wheel, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next episode of Speakipedia Media.